Born into a clerical family, Ali Khamenei studied at the religious seminary in Qom under the most prominent Shia scholars of the day, including Ruhollah Khomeini, who would later be the leader of the Iranian Revolution. Influenced by Khomeini's revolutionary ideas, Khamenei actively participated in anti-monarchy protests starting from 1963. He became a leading figure in establishing a new Iran after the monarchy was deposed in 1979. When the Iran-Iraq War broke out in 1980, the young Islamic Republic was struggling to establish itself both domestically and internationally. In 1981, Khamenei, a fiery orator in support of Khomeini, won the presidency. Throughout the 8-year war with Iraq, he frequently visited the front lines, earning the loyalty of the Revolutionary Guards. Iran was internationally isolated and economically devastated when Ayatollah Khomeini died in 1989. Hashemi Rafsanjani, one of the Islamic Republic's founding fathers, urged the Assembly of Experts to appoint Khamenei as the new supreme leader.
I told Mr. Hashemi Rafsanjani that I would not accept this. I believe I do not deserve this position. Perhaps you and I know this. This would be symbolic leadership, not real leadership.
But his leadership has been anything but symbolic. In the early 1990s, Khamenei focused on reviving Iran's economy. Iran began to reclaim a broader regional role after American military intervention in Iraq in 1991 that significantly weakened Iran's arch-enemy, Iraq's President Saddam Hussein. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq again and deposed Saddam Hussein, giving Iran the opportunity to establish allied groups in Iraq. When the Arab Spring erupted in 2010, Iran supported Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's military suppression of the opposition, and its influence expanded in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon and Yemen, which Iran refers to as the axis of resistance. At home, Khamenei favoured conservative presidents throughout his tenure, but he frequently found himself at odds with presidents in a power struggle. Khamenei's leadership faced its strongest challenge during the 2009 presidential election, when many took to the streets for months claiming the election was rigged. The country faced socio-political tension and economic devastation as Western sanctions devastated its economy. Barack Obama's presidency raised hopes for improved ties. In 2015, Khamenei authorized then-President Hassan Rouhani to sign a nuclear deal with world powers, most notably the United States, under which Iran agreed to reduce its uranium enrichment in exchange for the lifting of Western sanctions. But the US withdrew from the agreement in 2018 under President Trump. Khamenei then directed officials to accelerate Iran's missile and nuclear programs. In 2020, the United States assassinated Qasem Soleimani, a staunch Khamenei supporter and commander of Iran's Quds forces, further deteriorating Iran's relations with the West. Amidst the economic crisis, discontent continued in Iran. In 2022, nationwide protests against Mahsa Amini's death in police custody after she was accused of violating the mandatory hijab laws were one of Khamenei's biggest challenges. After the Hamas-led attack on October 7, 2023, Israel targeted Iranian officials, including its embassy in Damascus, in April 2024. Iran responded by launching hundreds of drones into Israeli territory. In the following months, Israel assassinated Hamas's political bureau chief, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran and killed Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah and Iran's most important ally in the region. Iran retaliated by firing nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel. A ceasefire was implemented after 12 days. Khamenei called for regional cooperation to stop Israel.
The policies adopted by our enemy are to sow the seeds of division and sedition, to drive a wedge among all the Muslims. They are the enemies of the Palestinians, Lebanese, Egyptians, Yemenis, Syrians and Iraqis.
Tensions flared up again after protests broke out in Iran in December 2025, first against the plummeting currency, then anti-government protests spread across the country. President Trump said he would attack Iran if it executed hundreds of protesters. Washington began a rapid and large-scale military build-up in the region, and Ayatollah Khamenei warned that any military conflict would not be contained within Iran's borders.
To anyone who seeks to attack, the Iranian nation will deliver a strong blow. Americans should also know that if they start a war this time, it will be a regional war.
Weeks of diplomatic effort to de-escalate followed, with Oman mediating 3 rounds of indirect talks between the US and Iran. Iran had proposed a deal authorized by Khamenei, but on the eve of further talks, Israel and the US attacked Iran. With the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran now stands at a historic crossroads, facing a future without the man who had guided the nation through turbulent times for decades.
What you have just watched is Al Jazeera's report, looking back on the life of Ayatollah Khamenei, dated March 1, 2026. After U.S. President Donald Trump said, Ayatollah Khamenei was killed in a joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike that hit his residence on Saturday. Iranian state media confirmed his death early Sunday morning. He was 86 years old. To review decades in just 5 minutes, it naturally cannot be considered sufficient information. I would like to supplement this with a few points going forward. First, regarding the possibility of Iran possessing nuclear weapons. According to an Al Jazeera report, following the U.S. withdrawal from the nuclear agreement under the Obama administration, in 2018, after President Trump's decision, Ayatollah Khamenei instructed officials to accelerate Iran's missile and nuclear programs. However, the facts are slightly different. This nuclear agreement involved not only the United States and Iran, but also China, Russia, and Europe. Iran did not immediately resume nuclear development after the U.S. withdrawal, maintaining the agreement for about a year before, proceeding in stages every 60 days thereafter. Ayatollah Khamenei's position has consistently been that nuclear weapons are prohibited under Islamic law. But that nuclear technology should be retained. About a year ago, on March 25, 2025, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard reported on the threat assessment of Iran at a Senate Intelligence Committee hearing.
Iran continues to seek expansion of its influence in the Middle East, despite the degradation to its proxies and defenses during the Gaza conflict. Iran has developed and maintains ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and UAVs, including systems capable of striking U.S. targets and allies in the region. Tehran has shown a willingness to use these weapons, including during a 2020 attack on U.S. forces in Iraq and in attacks against Israel in April and October 2024. Iran's cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
Where do you think we are, Tucker, with the various things that have happened since you and I last spoke in Riyadh, actually, for a really interesting double-header chat? But in particular, what happened with Iran, where Donald Trump decided to attack Iran. What did you feel about that? Given that it ended so apparently quickly, do you think Trump was vindicated in his short, sharp strategy there by bombing Iran? Or do you think that this will come back and haunt him down the line?
Well, of course, I can't say. I mean, my life is a kind of unbroken chain of bad predictions and embarrassing analysis. And I've been wrong so many times, and I will be in the future without question. However, it's just a fact that, events have consequences that we can't foresee, often for years or generations. And I think it's very unwise to use military force without a clear, achievable objective that serves the American national interest. In fact, it's not allowed to use it under any other circumstances. And in that case, I was concerned and remain concerned that this focus on Iran is not actually connected to our national security. How many Shiite terror attacks have there been in the United States in my lifetime? Let me do the math. 0. So don't tell me that the greatest threat we face is Iran. That's a lie. You're telling it on behalf of a foreign power. Maybe they feel the greatest threat they face is Iran. It's not the greatest threat we face. It's not an endorsement of Iran, okay? Doesn't make me a simp for the Shiites. It just makes me an American who's trying to think clearly about what our problems are. And our problems would include tens of millions of foreign nationals living illegally in my country. Nobody knows their identities. They would include a collapsing economy that makes it very hard for my children to have children and live the life that they grew up with and their friends and all American kids. It would include a drug crisis that's killed millions of Americans over the past 20 years. Iran is not even in the top 10 list. So you can scream at me all you want and call me names and call me a bigot or whatever, but there's no evidence to support that. And so if the energy of the US government is focused on a threat that's not the primary threat to us, it is by definition ignoring threats that are. And that's a kind of negligence. And so I pointed that out. I was, roundly attacked. My family was attacked. Whatever. I don't care. It's true. And everyone kind of knows it's true. And being bullied by Ben Shapiro into pretending that it's not true, it's just not on the program for me at 56. I'm just not doing that anymore.
What Tucker said here is true. There has been no confirmed evidence of Shia-led terrorism causing multiple deaths within the United States. However, there have been instances where attempts or plans were uncovered by the FBI. The U.S. has stated that Iran was involved in such cases. Among Sunni groups are Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The Shia sect includes groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, but when it comes to terrorist acts targeting Americans, Hezbollah's involvement is often cited. However, the locations are primarily in the Middle East. There have been no known successful bombings or terrorist attacks within the United States.
بدانید که این شعار شما مرگ بر آمریکای شما این فریادی که ملت ایران میکشن این دارای یک پشتوانه و عقبه منطقی و قوی است دارای پشتوانه عقلانی است معلوم هم هست که مراد از مرگ بر آمریکا مرگ بر ملت آمریکا نیست ملت آمریکا مثل بقیه ملت ها یعنی مرگ بر سیاست های آمریکا مرگ بر استکبار معناش اینه این دارای پشتوانه عقلانی است قانون اساسی ما به این ناطقه تفکرات اصولی و عمیق و منطقی بر این ناطقه و این رو برای هر ملتی که تشریح بکنیم این رو میپسندن و میپذیرن و قبول میکنن و الحمدلله جمهوری اسلامی راه خودش رو باز کرده است دارد پیش میرود من تردیدی ندارم در این که شما جوانهای عزیز روزهایی رو خواهید دید که بسیاری از این آرمانهای بلندی که جمهوری اسلامی ترسیم کرده است در کشور شما در زندگی شما تحقق پیدا کرده است.
President Trump has not ruled out boots on the ground in Iran. Are you afraid of a U.S. invasion in your country?
No, we are waiting for them.
You are waiting for the U.S. military to invade the ground troops?
Yes, because we are confident that we can confront them, and that would be a big disaster for them.
جانم شما اول بزرگ بشین انشالله قدرتون بلند بشه درس بخونین و عالم بشین و انشالله برای اسلام مفید باشین یه 80-90 سالم عمر کنین بعدم شهید بشین